G'day folks, it's Rob here and welcome to what used to be the aquaponic area in our small little backyard farm. The weather's been a little bit too wet to work on the new aquaponics system, so I spent a lot of this week going through old comments anywhere back to November. I've been catching up on 3 or 4 months worth now, and I've come across a couple that I thought I'd reply to in a bit of a video just to help you folks out. And if you're new to the channel and you want to be kept up to date with the progress on the new aquaponics system builds, which I'll be giving you a sneak peek at the end of this clip anyway, all you need to do is hit that little subscribe button down there and then pound on the bell icon once it appears, and YouTube will send you notifications either via emails or through the phone app whenever I upload a clip to the channel. So we'll get into the comments. I haven't singled anyone out, but there's been a theme for a couple of them. First off being folks wanting to know what I do for pest control in the aquaponics system. Now to begin with, the most common ones that I've had here were just before the system shut down anyway, was slugs. I had a load of slugs all through the bed. Now I tried a couple of methods with the slugs, the first being the little dish of beer that a lot of people will recommend that you leave out. The slugs are supposedly attracted to it, drink a little bit too much, pass out and drown in the beer. Now I must have fairly conservative slugs here because I found most of them would come, imbibe a bit of the party juice and then wander off home. So what I found I was better off doing was coming down and rounding up the slugs that had come for a bit of a party and the ones that were leaving the party, and then disposing of them, dispatching them outside of the aquaponics system. I didn't really feel like I collected the majority of the slugs, so I went to alternative number 2, and that is to flood the beds. Now with our flood and drain beds, that's very easy to do. All you need to do is pull out the standpipe that sends the water down into the drain, put an extra long one in, and let the water fill in the grow bed and then turn the water off. Now this forces all the slugs to the surface of the media, and you can just happily go around picking them off and disposing them somewhere else. If you've got some chickens or ducks, throw them in there and they'll have a field day with them. So overall I found that flooding the bed to collect the slugs to be the best way to go. Now with other pests like aphids, it's a little bit harder because they're actually on the plants themselves. I used a trick that I use also out in the soil patch, and that's to grab the garden hose, put it on a fairly hard jet, and then you just hose off the vegetables themselves, and you'll find that the water pressure will crush a lot of the aphids. And then I just follow up by going around and squishing the rest of the aphids with my fingers. You might have to do it 2 or 3 times, but I generally found I got on top of the aphids very quickly. So if you've got aphids, it's quite likely that you're also going to have ants in the grow beds. The reason being is they have a bit of a relationship. The ants protect and farm the aphids. Basically, they make sure no predators get to them, and in return for the protection, the aphids allow the ants to consume the sweet honeydew or waste product that they excrete, and so it's a bit of a symbiotic relationship. Now ants can be a bit of a persistent pest, especially if they set up a nest in the grow bed themselves. So the best way I found to move the ants on, after you give the aphids a bit of a squirt and get them under control, is to use the same method as the slugs. Extend your standpipe so the water just laps at the very top of your grow beds, and that will generally move the ants on. I find that you might have to leave the water in there overnight, but you come out in the morning and generally no ants can be seen. Now there's one pest most of us around the world have issues with in our aquaponics and our soil patch, and that would be the white cabbage butterfly. They like to come around, lay the eggs on the underside of the leaves, and then the little green caterpillars just decimate your brassicas. Now probably the easiest way to keep them under control is to spray with a bacterial agent called Bacillus thuringiensis, or most of you will know it as BT for short. In Australia, the only brand that I've been able to purchase is Nature's Way Dipel, so that's something to look out for. It's good for aquaponics because it's fish friendly, it's amphibian friendly, it's mammal friendly, and the only things it targets is the guts of the cabbage butterfly or other caterpillars. So that's what I'd be treating my brassicas with if I had an outbreak. Now another pest we get here in southeast Queensland, other than the noisy lorikeets, are the Queensland fruit flies. Other parts of the world will have the Mediterranean fruit fly. Both of them like to sting fruit as it's ripening, and then their maggots will just consume the fruit from the inside out. Here with our plants, I like to either harvest the fruit early and let it ripen up inside, say with our mango tree behind us here. But with the aquaponics, if you're dealing with say tomatoes or peppers, your capsicums, you might want to just either try and net complete plants, and if that's not possible, then bag up individual sections of fruit, whether a whole hand of tomatoes or an individual capsicum. And using those little exclusion bags, whether they're DIY or homemade jobbies or purpose-bought store ones, is definitely a lot cheaper than building a hoop house and then covering it with the veggie net just to keep your fruit safe. So another question I get a fair bit by folks who are wanting to use ornamental fish in their aquaponics system is how many can they put into their system, because obviously they may not grow as large as say the jade perch or a tilapia, and they're wanting to basically do the right thing and not overstock the system. Well, there's so many different fish you can use, and the best response I think I can give to this would be to go to the people you're buying the fish from, ask them, because they should know, what is the maximum weight for an adult fish of the variety you're buying, and then work out how many of those fish it would take to get up to 500 grams or roughly 1 pound in weight. The reason being is the basic stocking density ratio for an aquaponic system is 1 500 gram fish or 1 pound fish per 25 litres of wet media or 6.6 gallons of wet media. The reason being is that amount of media has enough surface area, biological surface area, to allow enough bacteria to set up colonies to process the waste from that amount of fish. So it is one of those things where I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be able to give you an exact answer. I do think you should speak to the people who are breeding the fish themselves, and again, check out what size they grow to, the maximum weight, and then work out your figures from there. So I hope that helps you folks out a little bit. So one last question, because old mate's brought his lawnmower out the back and we'll probably get drowned out soon. The question is, why do you do aquaponics? Now, 9 times out of 10 it's by people who are just curious, and every once in a while I get one of those elitist growers who think soil is king. Their method with their lotions and potions and whatnot will grow far superior vegetables than aquaponics, and yeah, I would have to agree to them to a point. When you're starting out with aquaponics, you have a very low nutrient load in the system. The fish are only small, not a lot of feed is going in, because it's the feed that gets processed by the fish first, then the bacteria that becomes a plant available nutrient. So to begin with, you're not going to have very nutritionally dense food coming out of the system. Now, the nutritional density of the plants aside, I'm into aquaponics because of the fish. I want to raise protein in my backyard, a nice healthy one that I can feed to my family. Jade perch, by the way, is said to have the world's highest amount of omega-3 oils in their system, so are a very healthy table fish. Now, one thing I do like to say to these folks is, can I give you a fingerling or maybe a goldfish snack that you guys have in the States? Pop it in your soil and grow me a fish. They often ignore that for some reason, I don't know why, and keep banging on about the nutritionally dense vegetables. So they don't quite get it when they become a little bit fundamentalist, that the protein source is my main reason for having aquaponics. So yeah, that's pretty much all it, folks. I didn't really think it was much of a mystery. In fact, most of the people I know who are into aquaponics grow it so they can grow their own fish in the backyard. And I do know that I am going to get a couple of haters out there for saying that, you know, aquaponic veggies aren't that nutritionally dense at the start, but you know, it's just common sense. If you're only putting a couple of pinches of fish food in, the fish are going to take some of that nutrients for their own growth, then there's only a little bit left for your plants to take up. So yeah, when you're first starting out, you may find you've got some deficiencies in the plants in the system, but over time, more fish feed will go in and the nutrient load will build up in the beds, and then it'll all be hunky-dory. Now, I better pop the phone in the little DJI cradle and we'll head up to the aquaponics system, so I think old mate's getting a bit close to the lawnmower. So here we are up underneath the deck of the house, and yeah, not a lot of progress on the aquaponics system. As you can see, I've still got bits and pieces out in the backyard. We've actually had a lot of rain since the weekend, and I've spent a lot of my time just digging some little trenches to get water moving around the house and pulling weeds and just tidying up out the back, which I'll show in a clip later on for you folks who are interested on just the garden side of things. But yeah, this is pretty much where the aquaponics is being set up. What we've got is the same 1,000 litre fish tank that I had set up in the original system, or the second system down the back there that you're all familiar with. And from that, we're going to have a pipe coming out into a radial flow settler. This little drum will be cut up differently than you've probably seen others cut up, and I'm going to turn that into a radial flow settler with the overflow going into another little filter within the sump tank down here. Now, I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to set up this little filter jobby yet. I might just have the water running out from the radial flow settler into some shade cloth, like mum and dad's system. That shade cloth will have 2 rolls. It'll fulfill a fines filter from any fines that come through from the settler. It'll also provide surface area for bacteria to colonize, to process the ammonia as it comes from the radial flow settler into the sump tank, because once it's in here it'll mingle again and some of that water will go back up through the pump back to the fish tank. So I would like some sort of biofiltration in here. So yeah, I might use a shade cloth, or I might get a little bit tricky and try and make up some sort of a filter with this filter media from the existing system. It might be just a solid pack trickle filter. We might even make an actual moving bed bioreactor and have an air stone in there to churn the media. We'll just have to wait and see. But anyway, the water will be exiting that filter, whatever it happens to be, picked up by the pump, and it will be a split flow. By the way, it might not actually be that pump, I'll probably swap it out, but the water will be picked up and it will be divided in flow. Some will be going to the grow beds. I'll have a line going up to that back corner up there, and there's the bell siphon that will flow back into the sump tank. And the other line will come up to this corner here, pop water into this grow bed, and it will exit via this bell siphon in this corner here into the sump tank. So that's pretty much all the plan for the system. Now Dave, one of our supporters over on our Farm Your Own Yard site, there'll be a little link up there if you want to suss it out, he brought up the fact that because it's under the deck, and because the house is on one side of it, the grow beds are going to receive a lot of shade. North is actually just over that way up there. So through winter, we're going to get more than enough sunlight hitting these beds through the day. In fact, we're probably going to get, in the peak of winter, a fair amount of sunlight hitting the fish tank as well, helping to keep that warm. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way or the position of it here. Do keep in mind though that this is only a very small system. I'm building a much bigger one later on down the back, but we've got to get a few other things sorted out landscape wise down there that I'll fill you in on the next clip, looking at the backyard. And yeah, then we're going to have a purpose built pergola out there that'll house the aquaponics system. Oh, by the way too, I am saving as much of this pipe work and hose work as I can to use on this system here, because as someone pointed out, it can be very expensive to get all these fittings all the time. And the way I'd like to make my systems is everything is recyclable. Like this section here, I could pretty much, because there's a threaded fitting in there, I could use a heat gun to take that off. But in this case, I'm just going to cut it, put a couple of elbows on there and run the water into the radial flow settler. And as you can see with the intake line into the fish tank itself, I've used some Teflon tape and a 316 stainless steel screw, and that secures it in place so it won't leak any water. So this whole unit can be used again and again and again, as long as it's not cracked or damaged. So I won't be spending a lot of money with this system. Probably the only outlay might be a new pump, and I'm also thinking about getting a UPS backup for the air pump. So if the power does go out, the air pump that will be running into the fish tank will have power drawn from the UPS, so the fish can stay alive, basically, nice and happy. Just quickly show you, I do have a couple of volunteers popped up in here already. Warrigal greens from seeds from the media when it was cleaned down the back. They've just sprouted, so I'm just going to leave them be, and hopefully we'll get this system finished in the next couple of weeks, month at the most, and yeah, they'll have some nutrients so they can keep growing. So there you go, just a little bit of an update on where I'm up to with this. Like I said, it's been raining here. I haven't been able to work on this week. We've had other things pop up, but hopefully over the next 7 days I'll go ahead leaps and bounds, and next week you'll have a much better idea on how I'm going to set this thing up. Just to let you know, we'll be using the old cabinet from the other system as well, just to hold the UPS and testing equipment and that sort of stuff. Before I go, I really do need to thank you all for coming along and thumbing up the clips and commenting below and sharing them around. Really do appreciate it. Just going through some of the comments over the last week, I've noticed that I've been chatting to some of you guys for 10 years. So yeah, I think next year's our anniversary. So thanks folks, I've really appreciated the friendship over the years. And I also need to thank those fantastic folks who are supporting us through the YouTube membership program, as well as the Farm Your Own Yard website that we've set up. Thank you very much folks. As always, please pop down to the description area below and suss out our super contributors websites and Facebook pages and show them some love. I really would appreciate it. But yeah, that's pretty much all it. Aquaponics update next week and a general yard update for those folks into the soil patch and the design. Hopefully tomorrow or the day after. But other than that, I'll leave it there. Hope you're all well and your gardens are booming, and I'll catch you next clip. Cheers folks, take it easy.